Well, first of all, Anthony, indeed a great video. Now, I just saw through, and in fact, people must have also seen. While I see there have been number of aspects that you've mentioned or showcased within this AV when it comes to diversity and inclusion at workplaces, there's this one aspect that I think should be laid attention to when it comes to having certain committees at workplace. Now, when it comes to that, you are experienced in devising such committees or helping organizations actually solve this issue. Would you elucidate on how exactly the process goes about?
You're referring to the POSH committees?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. So, look, that's sort of fairly, over time, that's kind of become fairly standardized. The committees are sort of required to be set up as per law. There's a procedure that's been set up in place for how it needs to be done. There's a gender ratio as well. 50% have to be female and or more.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the most important thing I think most people in this room will know is they have the powers of a court. So that is that gives the committee a lot of teeth. And today, organizations, management, etc., have realized that this committee needs to be given a lot of autonomy, a free hand. Early days, when committees were constituted, management used to try and make it constituted with their people so that they would give orders that were favorable and so on and so forth. But that tends to backfire. So over time, that's also changed. There's a lot of maturity that has come into the system. Okay. And now the POSH committees that are now set in place by organizations are sort of very, very mature organizations, well-trained. They know exactly what they need to do.
Now, considering that, you are a pioneer when it comes to training solutions, what are the kind of solutions that you provide to organizations in terms of services?
Right. So, if you've seen the videos, you'll see we are a company of storytellers. What we believe that employees are part, and I think that's kind of a recurring theme that we have seen all day today, right? The new generation of employees, you can't just put something in front of them, a PPT or an animation, and say you better listen to what is going on here and complete the quiz at the end of it because it's mandatory. You have to get their attention. You have to hold their attention. So what we do differently is that we've basically everything that you see on Rainmaker is like watching a short film on OTT platform or watching a short film period. The idea is make it interesting. People will happily comply with your training requirements, but you make it boring and you've lost your audience. So our function is basically that. Everybody in our company is a storyteller. They've always got stories to narrate. They've always got stories to tell. And that's what we capture in our modules as well. Everything is a story. Of course, there's a learning that you take away from it. Otherwise, what is the purpose of the entire exercise? But it's very dramatized. It's a story. People will always love hearing it, and it'll stay in their minds, most importantly. So we are looking to transform the way people behave at workplaces. Right? And that's the key thing that we're trying to do, whether it's POSH, diversity and inclusion, or code of conduct, or bribery and corruption, or what have you. Our focus is to change the way people behave and think at the workplace.
So talking about learnings and, explaining people in terms of storytelling, Antony, what have been your learnings now that you've dealt with a number of organizations in helping them find solutions and curating services from them? So what has been that one learning, a certain instance or an anecdote that you would like to share with everyone, which you think will always remember, will be with you throughout?
So there's not just one, there are hundreds and thousands of anecdotes, sure. Right? Because, so my primarily learning is that, and I think given the number of HR professionals we have in this room, I think they'll probably echo my sentiments, which is listen to your employees, or for us, in our case, it's listen to the learners. Those people who are actually watching and your training modules and learning, they have a lot of feedback to share. And if you give them enough opportunity to share what they have to say, there are lots of nuggets of gold and diamonds that are there. So we have a process by which we get feedback from our learners. And that feedback is what we use to improve the products that we have, make it better. In fact, there have been so many instances You asked for an anecdote, but I can tell you
Right.
one instance where lots of employees, of course, saw a posh module and said, why is it not gender neutral? Why is it only protecting women at the workplace? Of course, there is a whole story to why the posh law, protects women, all
Right.
of that. But many of them said, why don't you also show situations where men are getting sexually harassed? And it's true, men do get sexually harassed. It might be a microscopic minority, but it does happen. So we took that feedback and then we said, okay, fine. We'll in our next module, we'll show a scenario where a man is getting sexually harassed. I mean, it does happen, and
So it's according to the needs that you're customizing the process.
and also according to feedback. People are giving feedback all the time. They're saying, look, we want to see this, we want to see that. It's a bit like the entertainment industry, right? You get feedback on the basis of what people want to see on an OTT platform or on films or what have you, right?
Of course.
So you take the feedback, we take the feedback and make it feed forward, and we create new modules on the basis of what people want, and that works best for us.
Fair enough. Also, Antony, when we talk about DNI, so it's not just the usual DNI that we talk about, wherein people used to think it's only for the inclusion of women that we're talking of DNI as a concept. Can you highlight certain issues or certain problems that organizations come up to you with, because you deal with such issues on daily basis? So most of the people do not even know what DNI actually comprises of. There are various aspects to it. So can you highlight what are certain problems that you've been facing over the years that organizations have been coming back to you with?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. In fact, I think in different shapes and forms, it's been addressed during the course of the day. I think the session just before lunch had a very good, panel discussion on DEI, and the panelists really shared some valuable insights on that as well. It's too large an area for me to answer in a minute, but I'll tell you what we are focused on. Our primary focus is on unconscious bias,
Okay.
or what now people increasingly are calling non-conscious bias, right? Where the biases that we human beings carry. So our focus is to make sure that human beings or individuals, employees, and companies are aware of these biases, right? Having a bias is not a crime or not something really negative. It's just that
Not being aware about it is
not being aware about it, and moving through your work or your professional journey without being aware of it can be a problem. It doesn't always have to be a problem, but occasionally it can be a problem. So our objective is to make sure that people are aware of biases. Specifically in India today, I think still the biggest problem is gender. Problem in terms of we need to address issues that arise out of gender biases, disparities, biases, etc. How to have a workforce that is more inclusive, particularly for women. But if you're talking about biases, then obviously there's a plethora of biases that we need to address from a DEI perspective. So persons with disability, the LGBTQ plus community, even very simple things like discrimination on the basis of age, right? We don't realize it, but an interesting stat came to me where an article that I read said that people hire. If you speak to any CHRO, they'll say, "Oh, we have very progressive policies.
Mm-hmm.
We don't discriminate on the basis of age, for example." But if you take a look at the data, when you take a look at how many people they hired above the age of, say, 50, you'll probably find very little.
That's what I'm saying. It's just a matter of tokenism in certain organizations, wherein, of course, they boast about having diverse policies at work, but when it comes to numbers, when we actually calculate on what is the percentage of such people that they're onboarding, because some say that we have people from PWD background, or people with Down syndrome backgrounds, so we hire them. So it's the ratio that matters. How often are you onboarding such people, wherein it claims that this organization hires basis talent and not basis preferences or the ailments. So very rightly you pointed out, it's the facts, the numbers which come out, they don't prove to be in sync with what their policies stand for.
So you've identified a key issue, which is that there is definitely a gap between intent and execution.
Right.
On paper, and when people talk about what they do in their organizations, the spokespeople always talk about, how DEI is important, what they, what all they would like to do about it. But there are so many stats now that are coming out. Many companies do. A lot of these companies that profess DEI as some of the key areas that they're working on don't even have an clearly articulated DEI policy in terms of what they will do, how they will do it, how will they add greater diversity to the workforce, how are they going to be more inclusive. There's a huge gap between intent and execution. So this is an area where I think professionals who are focused on this area, they're going to be busy for the years to come, but because clearly organizations will have to move, keep pace with the changing times, and have to be more diverse, have to be more equitable, definitely have to be more inclusive. There's no doubt about it.
Now, considering that we're around the corner for International Women's Day on 8th of March, if I talk about the aspect of inclusion of women at work, it's actually the most trending topic. What would be your take when it comes to inclusion of women as a D&I concept, not just having them in the workforce, but actually giving them leadership positions?
Sure.
What's your take on the same? What is your view? Anything that you would like to highlight? Because stats do claim that, we do have women at the scholarly result, but when it comes to getting down to organizations, coming up to the level of leadership, the number decreases. And one of the aspects is that today women claim that technology as an enabler is not for them, because it is proving a glass ceiling for them, because
Yes.
daily technological advancement is something that organizations are not training properly. So what's your take on the same?
No, so on women in leadership positions, clearly there's so the first things first, there's definitely good news. The good news is that over the last 5, 10, 15 years, there's been a significant uptick in terms of women in leadership positions in India, right? So I have a lot of stats that I'd like to share with you.
Please do.
So the percentage of women's representation on Indian boards has tripled in the last 10 years, right? So it's gone up threefold in the last 10 years. Almost 95% of the Nifty 500 companies have at least one female board member, up from 69% in 2017. So again, there's clearly movement there. However, along with the good news, the downside is that only less than 5% of these companies have a female chairperson, right? So you are inducting a lot more women on the board, but how many women do you really see in a chairperson capacity? Less than 5%. But a lot of this is now, if you ask me, could this have happened naturally or organically? Probably not. A lot of the representation, female representation on boards of Indian companies is happening because of the law. Right. The law that mandates that you've got to have at least one woman on your board. But again, with this, so because of that, we are now starting to see greater participation of women in the boards of companies. But there's more interesting, data here. There is a, HBR, Harvard Business Review did a comparison between when Norway mandated, and Norway is one of those Scandinavian countries that is considered to be the gold standard when it comes to, progressive policies.
Right.
They did a comparison between India and Norway, and how both countries had made it mandatory for women's representation on the board of a company. And they said that in Norway, what happened was that it ended up being a small group of women who were circulating on 90% of the boards. Basically, it's a very small population of highly qualified women leaders who were sitting on all the boards. Okay. Contrary to that, in India, which is, that's the part I really like and I'm getting to, is it was far more staggered. There was genuinely a lot more participation and a scattered participation. It's not just a small community of women sitting on all the boards. Rather, there was a lot more, it was a lot more equitable. And I think part of this, of course, some of this is attributable to the fact that India has a lot of the women, some of the women rather, were what is called insiders. They were related to promoters and their families, etc. But still, a large chunk of women were women professionals who had worked their way up, and there was a big, it was far more democratic and scattered than it was in Norway. So I thought that that was very, very interesting, given that, in terms of how we are vis-a-vis Norway in terms of development and progressive policies.
Antony, while we have a certain percentage of what you claim at a chairman level or an MD level, but the nature of competitiveness which is there amongst the lot when it comes to majority of men is still there, because the number that we're talking about is in comparison to a whole lot of 90% men who are actually given that position. Now, when we come to a stance wherein we're working on a diverse set of backgrounds and we need to change people's mindsets as well, as an enabler, I would say, as an organization who is working or striving so hard to provide an equitable environment to women at work along with other aspects, what do you think are some of the strategies that companies can actually adopt, but not just, as previously also I said, by not just making it a matter of tokenism, but actually putting it into force?
Yeah.
So can you help them, or can you provide certain strategies to begin with that companies can adopt?
That's again, it's a great question, and there's, if I could go on the whole day on this, but DEI, I think it's now established very well that it needs to come from the top, and I think this theme recurred even in the prior panels and the conversations we're having even before. It is not something the folks at the lower to mid level don't necessarily need that much training or strategization. It is really the people at the top that need to say, I have bought in, this is our DI strategy, and this will be implemented. So my view is shareholders and boards of companies need to put pressure on their management to say that this, along with the parliament and legislative pressure, to say that we would like to see greater participation. We started with one female director for listed companies and so on and so forth. That needs to expand. Maybe a third of the entire board should consist of women, and so on and so forth. So that's the only way to do it. Interestingly, our board, Rainmaker's board, is 2/3 women. I'm the only man on that board.
Okay. That's something you do not hear on everyday basis, of course. And I believe that whatever strategies and talks that you've shared here, companies actually take a note of it and take your help as well, if it ever, if they do require to get in touch with you as well. My last question. Do you think, or do you still feel that there is a long way when it comes to women at work? There is a long way for them to be still battling battles, because technology is an enabler for any industry. And in the HR specifically, while I had a word and I read a survey as well, they feel that the usual technological advancements that's specifically happening in the HR space is becoming a glass ceiling for them, because they're not able to cope up with the daily technological needs. And I wouldn't say just women, it is basis to a certain age number, but women are facing more such issues. What is your take on the same?
I feel that it's not so much a gender issue as it is a mindset issue.
Okay.
If you have to embrace technology in today's world, and it's accelerating now. You can see the speed at which technological changes are really, it's all pervasive. It's a part of our life. Till about 2 months ago, nobody knew what ChatGPT was. Suddenly, panels are talking about ChatGPT and its importance, right? So you can see how quickly it's moving. So I don't think it's either gender or age or anything like that. It's mindset. Those who embrace technology, in my view, will move faster, because that's the future. It's here already. We have to sort of embrace it and move ahead. And one last thought before we close this. I feel like you had said that in terms of strategies, what is it that people could do? I feel like at an individual level, there should be a lot more allyship. So whether it's just on the basis of for gender or persons with disability or LGBTQ or what have you, right? If you want greater diversity and a more inclusive workforce, I think each one of us have to be allies and really put in our best to make sure that we're taking everybody along and not just a small group.
Fair enough, Anthony. Thank you so much. I open the forum to anybody wanting to ask anything to Anthony with regards to what we've just talked about or anything additional that you might have in mind. Sure. Can somebody please help her with the mic?
Hi, good afternoon, Anthony. It was a pleasure listening to you. I work in the area of learning, talent, and D&I. My name is Ruby Khan. While you spoke about glass ceiling, one of the most painful scenario in organization is broken rung. McKinsey came up with a report saying last year that out of 100 men getting promoted, only 78 women get promoted as a first-time manager. And this year it is 87. What is your organization's experience in collaborating and partnering with organizations to fix this broken rung?
So, very good question. So what we are now developing, so actually there are many factors that go into the broken rung, right? And I think some of the key factors is the break that women take, just when they have reached that period where they are set for leadership positions, primarily due to maternity and family and other things. So they lose out on a certain period of time, right? 3, 5, 7, 10 years, depending on how long. So we lose some really high quality talent at that level. So there are a lot of initiatives that are sort of underway by a lot of organizations to fix the broken rung. But I think primarily organizations have to make it have to probably set set an framework or policies in place that makes it very conducive for women to return to work, right? I would even go so far as to say that for those who are returning, make it easier for them to join at maybe a slightly elevated level, depending on the experience and what they were doing before they left your organization. I feel like if every organization went out of the way to say that, hey, if you are returning to our organization, we are going to go the extra mile and make it easier for you to return, give you more opportunities, etc., etc. So that's one thing that can be done. But at the same time, I think a lot of organizations also end up in their effort to try and make life easier for a returning employee, they often end up not giving them challenging assignments, which actually is counterproductive, right? A big project is coming up. The person who is most qualified and who has just returned from, say, maternity leave is not even asked, right? Because, hey, you may not be able to cope with everything that is that this project entails. I think many times the employee who is discriminated against, their view is, you know what? If you had asked me, I could have at least, I would have appreciated being at least asked the question. Maybe I might have declined, but the least you could have done is asked me and checked in with me to say, hey, listen, you have the experience for this. Would you like to pick up this project? I know you have just returned from leave, but if you'd like to, this project's on the table and we'd love for you to take it. So that's what I mean by creating the right atmosphere for employees, right? Those are the little things that go a long way in fixing the broken rung.
Sure. Thank you. In fact, the research says that it is not the sabbatical that women take, which is a problem or a challenge, but the problem is not assessing or evaluating them on the basis of their potential and only looking at the performance. Yes. Thank you so much.
That's all coming out of the biases.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I hope it answers your question.